Stuff to talk about, man. A lot of weird shit going on in the world. We got the whole Russia-Ukraine crisis and how that's going to affect the American economy. Things to watch out with that. How that's going to affect oil and gas prices at the pump. I've already seen I actually saw earlier today, in one of the areas that I travel to frequently, gas was over $4 a fucking gallon, which is kind of insane. It was $4.19 at a Shell station, and Shell's kind of known for having like not the best prices in the world, but like decent prices. Usually the ones, you're self-pumping or whatever, those are typically good prices. But this Shell station was self-service, and I was kind of blown away. The Biden State of the Union was March 1st, which was interesting, this past Tuesday. That's something to talk about too. Spoke a lot about what he wants to do to the economy, a lot about the Build Back Better
Biden's approval
plan.
ratings are going up.
What's up?
Biden's approval ratings are going up. He's doing a very good job.
Is that inflation, or is it like actually going up?
It's actually going up.
I thought there might have been inflation, to be honest with you. And then another thing that came up too this week, I don't know if you saw, it was big time in the headlines and kind of got swept under the rug with the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. Employees of the Federal Reserve are finally banned from trading securities, both equities and debt, which is pretty interesting because you'd kind of think that if you're going to be a policymaker, you're going to make very important decisions relating to monetary and fiscal policy. You wouldn't be dabbling in the markets, right?
Well, why doesn't it apply to Congress and Nancy Pelosi?
Of course, that's another thing you could talk about too. Different pieces of legislation, those stupid stock acts that were passed that clearly don't affect people in Congress, and the Nancy Pelosi Twitter account. Do you ever see that Nancy Pelosi trading Twitter account that just got fucking Thanos snapped? It's pretty wild. It was basically following
her husband.
Yes, exactly. So her husband is an active trader. He had positions in like Roblox and like, a few different companies that IPO'd, so on and so forth. Google, I think, was another company. And it was just like she had to disclose all these stock trades that her husband was making. And she's like, oh, I'm not telling him anything or whatever. And then it's like a day before something enters Congress, it's like he's fucking buying Google and he's like buying all this shit. But of course, he'd have to disclose it. I think it's like a month later. Is that the case? Or is it like 2 months later?
90 days.
90 days. Yeah, that makes sense. That seems to make sense to me. So 90 days, they have to disclose all these trades they're making, and they do so. But the problem is you're caught so behind the fucking curve because you're literally trading on information that's 3 months old. So there is no edge. The real edge is like if you knew that the person was fucking doing that, and then you're able to kind of get in. So there's no edge with that at all, and it's not really worthwhile. But a lot of stuff going on in the world today, a lot of stuff to talk about. So I guess a good place to start, maybe we'll have time to react to some videos at the end, but I think a good place to start is like Russia-Ukraine and just kind of what's going on there and our thoughts on it. So how do you feel about, how that whole situation is going to affect the American economy? I know that you're big into like a lot of the macroeconomic stuff like me, but I'm just curious, like what your take is on that. God, hang on. I think he's answering a few prayers right now, folks. I'll come back in a couple of minutes. But as far as Russia and Ukraine goes, there's been a lot of wacky shit going on in the world lately. Obviously, you can tell that we're recording this in March. This is kind of as this shit's unfolding. It looks like we're on the verge of World War III here. I don't really know what Putin's intent is with invading Ukraine, but it seems to me that he's keen on rebuilding the Soviet Union and seizing control of Ukraine and kind of using that whole, group of people in the Donbass region who identify as Russians as kind of his rationale for invading Ukraine. And it's just been kind of crazy lately. So I think he's invading because he wants the natural resources. He's an old man, wants to rebuild the Soviet Union, but I don't think he anticipated the Ukrainians fighting back as much as they did. And I certainly think that he didn't expect the international community to step in to the extent that they did. Just fucking open a can of whoop ass on them. Pretty hilarious. If you look at like what they're using to fight the Russians are invading with, supposedly, right? I saw shellings going on. You could see there were some Twitter videos going around. But unless you're really there or you have, live stream feeds of what's going on, you can't really tell. But we do know they're shelling civilian cities, which is pretty fucked. Because really these are people that like they have nothing to do with it. They're just civilians, and to attack them is pretty fucked up. But as far as anything else is concerned, we know that it's a big problem, and supposedly Russian tanks are invading and helicopters are invading as well, and the Ukrainians are using American javelins to shoot them out. So you're literally talking about a $20,000, rocket launcher, just like a modern day rocket launcher, just blowing up like a $20 million tank. So it's just like pure guerrilla warfare. There supposedly have also been videos of Ukrainians seizing Russian tanks, and that's kind of been a little wacky. But some people who are more like conspiratorial think that there's a lot of other stuff going on and it's a lot of other trouble afoot. So we'll see what's going on with that. Ukraine has a ton of freaking resources too. God's real busy answering a lot of prayers right now. So I'm just going to ramble on a little bit about this and then get his take when we come back. But Ukraine has a ton of iron ore. They have a ton of natural gas, a ton of oil. They've got quite a bit of, I believe, lithium as well. They have some other natural resources. And it's definitely, I think in terms of population, it's like, they got like 40 million people or something like that. And I think they might be the second largest country in terms of like square mileage as well in Europe. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. It looks like the Russians are aligning with Belarus too. And Belarus, I mean, that's kind of to be expected. I think the Belarusian president is the second longest serving European leader, like second to Putin. So that really shouldn't come as much of a shock. I mean, these guys aren't democratically elected. Kind of goes without saying. They just pretty much seized control. But supposedly now Belarus is housing nuclear weapons on the border. And it looks like the Russians are aligning tanks on that Belarusian Polish border as well. So people are speculating that the Russians might try to invade Poland next. And I mean, at that point, you got to think World War III is most likely a certainty, and it's probably going to happen. Hopefully, we don't come to that point. Hopefully, there's still some peace that can be made and some amends that can be made. But it really, it's not looking too fucking great here, folks. And it just seems like the international community is very quick to go after Russia. And in some aspects, rightfully so. But I think removing Russia from like the SWIFT banking system and kind of just telling Russia to kick rocks is going to be a little tough to do, especially because Russia accounts for such a large portion of Europe's natural gas and oil. So, for instance, Germany, if you guys looked at the data, 35% of Germany's usage of oil and natural gas comes from Russia. So you're talking about a situation with, now it's March, right? So if this whole thing drags on for months through November, December, January, you're talking that's going to be brick. It's going to be brick out during that time of year. If this whole thing is going on and unfolding before our very eyes, is there a situation where Germany and a lot of these other countries that are relying on Russia kind of get left in the dark? So, but there's been a lot of stuff that's been going on. We definitely want to get into that. God, I know, has some interesting inputs. He's got a lot of shit to talk about. So we're definitely going to get into that. But for the time being, I'll hang out until he's done answering some prayers and we'll go from there. But a lot of stuff to talk about. The world's getting crazier every day. Hey, there he is. He's done answering some prayers. What's up, God?
I just banished everyone. I sent everyone to bed.
God, what did you do? You banished them from your kingdom?
Yeah.
God, you missed it. For the first 15 minutes of the show, I was just talking about all the craziness that's been fucking going on in your world that you created. So it's been a little fucking nuts,
What, with Russia?
Oh, well, the whole Russia-Ukraine thing, everything going on with oil and gas prices, Biden's State of the Union, and then the Federal Reserve banning employees from trading equities and debt. Just been talking a little briefly about that. We've got some videos we could react to on the back end. But for the time being, there's a lot of stuff we want to do.
Putin and the Russians just spreading misinformation across the land.
Good segue, too. So this whole Russia-Ukraine thing's been going down. Everyone's following this stuff very closely. It looks like the international community has already kind of drawn sides to this whole thing. The Russian stock market shut down for the last 5 fucking days. I don't think we've ever seen that before, right? the last thing that I could remember that even comes close to that is maybe 08. But even then, how long did the stock market shut down? Like 2 days or something, 3 days? The U.S. stock market,
It shut down. It shut down in 08.
I thought they shut down for like, well, don't they have I mean, I could be completely wrong, but don't they have like breakers? Like if the market like dips below a certain percentage, they just fucking close the market. I'm pretty sure. Let's fact check that. All right.
That's a halt. That's not a complete shutdown.
Let's get Jamie to look this up. Young Jamie, let's look up when the stock market shut down. U.S. stock market shut down. All right. In the meantime, though, what do you think about what's going on with U.S. What do you think what's going on with? Here we go. U.S. stock market shut down. What was that? That looks good.
Going back 155 years, America saw the New York Stock Exchange shut down. Wow! After the assassination of Abraham Lincoln,
what is that? Oh, sorry. I'm interrupting you. ADD. Sorry. What's going on
here?
The
president's death led to a week-long break from trading. September 20th, 1873, a Philadelphia banking firm known as J. Cook and Company goes under after weak demand from its railroad bonds. So after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln was once, did it shut down any more times?
Is that the street? That's Jimmy Cramer's fucking news source. Go back on that. Looks like there's a couple of things that he has listed. History of notable market halts. Let's open that up. We got young Jamie looking this up for us. He's on our payroll, We're borrowing him from Rogan. Yeah, mute that shit. Come on.
No, not today with the ad.
They're trying to, you got to get the ad block. Folks, if you don't use, first of all, this guy, he's such a bozo. He's using Microsoft Edge. You don't use Microsoft Edge, folks. You use Brave browser. You never see an ad. Everything's ad-free. It has built-in ad block for YouTube. It's essentially
so World War One.
Hey. We got a commercial here for Brave, okay?
Yeah, we don't care about that.
No, we do. Listen, bozo.
They're not
this guy,
us.
Listen, folks, don't listen to this guy. God, he's a total fraud. He's using Microsoft Edge, which is basically Internet Explorer that they rebranded because Internet Explorer was just known for memes and being a piece of shit. Folks, you got to use Brave browser. Brave browser is the best browser on the web. Pays you for viewing ads. You can opt out. It looks like God decided to type Putin sucks cock in the search bar, which I'm sure will give him some interesting results had he Googled that. But it looks like we got some notable stock market halt. So the whole thing that, I was previously alluding to here is that there were stock market halts. I thought that there were a few closer to the 21st century. I actually did think there was one in 08.
Black Monday, of course.
Obviously. Black Monday, of course. All right, so God, let's go through this quick because this is an interesting topic for people who aren't too privy to this. So what are some of the few more notable stock market halts? So it looks like we got Black Monday.
This is different than Russia, though. Russia had shut down for a week. These are just temporary halts.
Right. So these are just circuit breakers tripping in the New York Stock Exchange, correct?
Oh, you could say that. There might be a little bit of corruption, but
well, that's a little bit more conspiratorial. I don't think we should explore that avenue. But the whole idea is that at a certain point of a sell-off, the market just halts, and then you can't fucking sell anything, right? That's kind of the idea, but people also take advantage of that. See, 9/11. See what I mean? I told you that there were market closings and things of that nature. Look, wait. See? 2000. Here you go. I'll read this right here. December 1st, 2008. This was the last time we saw the New York Stock Exchange halted for big sell-offs. It's hard to forget the turmoil of 2008 housing crisis that put the country into a recession. Car companies were bailed out. Financial institutions were liquidated. Massive amounts of capital disappeared in days from the market. So the last time we saw a major market shutdown was 2008. So it looks like I was right. Young Jamie, thank you for pulling that up. Appreciate it. So back to Ukraine and Russia. The main thing that's going on there is that we kind of don't know what's going on. So from what I was hearing, we're hearing that Russia is shelling civilian targets in addition to Air Force bases, in addition to airports. It certainly seems that is the case. Supposedly, there are Russian tanks that have been mobilizing on the Belarusian border, which is that northern region that connects to Ukraine. As you know, Belarus shares a border with Russia. And now we're also hearing a few different reports about Russia moving nuclear warheads into Belarus. And it certainly looks like things can escalate further.
Well, they
Now
just
at the
took over
same,
that nuclear power plant in Ukraine.
yes, I did hear that as well. That's major. You're talking about Chernobyl, I believe, right? Chernobyl was, that whole nuclear disaster that happened in the 80s. Terrible fallout that came from that. But yeah, the Russians took over that. We saw that on a live stream. We saw tanks mobilized outside. So that's been fucking
No.
unbelievable.
This is not Chernobyl. This is recently. Look at
Oh,
this.
you're talking about a different one. I thought you were talking about Chernobyl. All right, so here we go. Let's see what else was going on here. But in the meantime, it was
This
very
is in
interesting. Oh, okay, here you go.
Kreinsack.
Yeah, how about let's not pronounce that because that is some fucking name. It literally looked like someone started typing use and then they just had a seizure while they were typing on the keyboard. And I know that might be a little bit offensive to some of you fucking snowflake cunts out there, but this is the Anonymous Investors podcast. We're not afraid to speak our mind. We're not afraid to talk about what's going on in the world. And we're not afraid of making jokes here. So if you're bothered by that,
Oh, they
dislike,
attacked two. They took over
unsubscribe. We don't care.
two nuclear plants.
All right, God, you
One
want
in
me to
that.
take this away or you want to read this? Here we
Yeah,
go.
you could read. You could see if you could read these properly.
Yeah, okay, bozo. Russian forces in southern Ukraine were advancing towards the country's second largest nuclear plant on Friday, one day after the largest such facility, according to reports. Get this off. What is this?
Linda Thomas Greenfield.
Oh, I was going to see if the reader could read the word
Are
correctly.
you kidding me? What do you think I am, a bozo? I could read this. The troops were closing in on the nuclear power plant after Russia's previous attack Thursday targeted the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in Erdenhord. Lydia Thomas Greenfield, UN ambassador to the UN ambassador to the United Nations. Isn't that fucking redundant? Whatever. Told the UN Security Council. Okay, so it looks like the Russians are closing in on another nuclear power plant that is not Chernobyl. So that means that this is actually an active nuclear power plant. It looks like, and now they're also saying that the nuclear power plant that is close to being seized by the Russians is in imminent danger, and Russian forces are now 20 miles and closing in from Ukraine's second largest nuclear facility. Wow. So the real thing that's going on here that obviously it's very tough to know what's going on, right?
Chernobyl is in Belarus, right?
What's up with Chernobyl? What happened?
That's in Belarus, right?
Chernobyl is in Ukraine. That was the largest nuclear disaster. The other one that was huge was Fukushima, and that was in Japan.
That wasn't in Belarus.
It was not in Belarus. It's Ukraine. You can fact check me on that if you want. God,
I know my
motherfucking geography.
I thought I saw some video. It was like this guy bald and something. He's called Bald on something on YouTube, and it was like Chernobyl, and he was in Belarus.
Nah. So oh, by the way, those urban exploration videos are the coolest fucking thing ever. Where it's like, I think there's a guy that I used to watch back in the day. I mean, you're talking OG YouTube days. It was like exploring with Josh, and he would just go to like all these random places, which I know it's like way off topic, but I think he went to like Chernobyl and a few of these other different places, and it's pretty crazy just to see how things kind of decay pretty quickly without human intervention on like buildings and engineering. So
this guy I'm talking about, he went to like Ukraine like maybe about 4 months ago, and he just bought an apartment building. He did like a whole video. He bought an apartment building for like $80,000. It's probably the worst return on his investment. Probably destroyed right now.
Yeah, I mean, the Russian shellings, like we said, they're targeting civilians. It just looks like they're trying to scare people and get them the fuck out of the country as quick as they can. Supposedly, a major portion of Putin's plan to take Russia was kind of blitzkrieg, to reference a World War II term here. It looks like they wanted to
scare. He got sanctioned from the banking system. He's not a part of SWIFT anymore.
Right. That's a main thing too to talk about. So SWIFT, for those of you that don't know, I guess we should speak a little to that because we know a lot about this. We're real plugged in. We have high level sources and intelligence sources and things of that nature. So we know what's going on. We're in the know. But for those of you that don't know, the SWIFT payment system is effectively the very clunky and outdated system that is used by countries and governments all over the world. Essentially what it is it's automatic clearinghouse, which is, just like a very run-of-the-mill transfer of moving money from one account to another, but it allows for international monetary exchange. So being removed from SWIFT is very, very big, because that means that all of the business interests that Russia has in the countries that are in the European Union, within the United States, any country that has sanctioned Russia, Russia cannot withdraw that money from. So now it looks like you're pulling up a much more. All right, so what's going on here with SWIFT? What do we got here? I'm sure the
SWIFT for
IMB
electronic
is a
fund
part of
transfers.
this, and
Need to transfer money overseas. Today is easy to walk into a bank and transfer money anywhere around the globe. But how does this happen? Behind most international money and security transfers is the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, SWIFT. SWIFT is a vast messaging network banks and other financial institutions use to quickly, accurately, and securely send and receive information such as money transfer instructions. More than 11,000 global SWIFT member institutions sent an average of 42 million messages per day throughout the network in 2021, marking an increase of 11.4% over 2020. Okay, what is a message though? But that doesn't talk about any how much money.
right, the daily payments and things like that. That's a very interesting thing to see if we can find. What was that I just saw in February 2022? What was that at the top? That was interesting. This is more talking about like the first
Where did you see
characters.
that? Okay,
In
right there.
February 2022. Here you go. This is big. In February
In February
2022.
2020,
Oh, you got. All right, go ahead. You got it. You got it.
you got it.
Oh, you got it.
In
You're good.
February 2022, the U.S. and European Union removed some key Russian banks from SWIFT, deepening their economic sanctions on Russia over its actions in Ukraine. Yeah, we just said that.
Yep. So this whole thing's going on Swift. So the main thing that people are afraid of here, and this is why this affects you. If you're listening to this, you're an American most likely. Even if you're not an American, this will affect you. Unfortunately, the U.S. and a lot of European Union countries, NATO countries, even some neutral countries, it looks like particularly Brazil and Mexico are remaining neutral,
Even
and they are
Switzerland
not.
too, who usually doesn't get involved.
Switzerland, which this is crazy. Switzerland is a historically neutral country, and they particularly don't get involved in things that relate to economic warfare or anything of that nature, like sanctions. Switzerland, historically neutral, has imposed sanctions on Russia, which is big because you got to think how many of these guys, Russian guys, how many of them have Swiss bank accounts, right? The Russian oligarchs. How much money does Putin have in Swiss bank accounts offshore? I mean, these are big things going on. So it's a very, very, very interesting scenario unfolding before our very eyes. But now here was the real weird thing that was going on.
I think he has money in Australia, the oligarchs.
Oh, I would not be
Remember
surprised about that
remember
whatsoever.
that institution that got caught?
Who
Hold
was
on, let me
that?
see if I can find this. Australia. X.
Australia does a lot of trade with China as well, folks. Their second biggest trade partner is China, only second to the US. They're also here's another thing too that we can mention a little bit here as God's looking for this link. There were some Russian oligarchs that were targeted, and they actually seized a yacht from this one guy, which is fucking
Oh,
crazy.
remember that
And this
genius who
happened in the
attacked Elon
UK.
Musk's jet? He's now tracking the oligarchs.
Yeah, that, and you know what that means to me? That means that the government's greasing them, because the government is cracking down on these Russian oligarchs. I'm telling you, dude. And by the way, folks, if you don't know, we'll offer a little bit of backstory on this. There was a kid college kid, smart guy, was targeting, yeah, like he's a fucking, no, he was, yeah, targeting. That's not the right word at all. He
Well,
was
he was just
tracking,
tracking
he,
Elon Musk's jet. So
exactly.
basically, to give shareholders information on like where he is, what he's doing. If he's in Berlin, then it gives us information on like if the plant's gonna open up soon or not. So he's basically tracking his movements, which it could be valuable to like certain shareholders. So he's just tracking him, and basically Elon Musk didn't like what he was doing because he thought it was
Because
like a
it
security
poses a
threat.
security risk. Absolutely.
Right, that he's telling people where he is all the time, and then people could like attack his plane.
Yep.
So
That's a
he
huge
offered
problem.
him $5,000 to take down the account, but then the kid refused. He wanted a job on an internship at Tesla and a Model 3, I think. I'm not sure what car it was. I think it was a Model 3 he asked
Right.
for. And then Elon just blocked him and said, "This feels like bribery." And he got pissed off.
Mm. So what's interesting about
that's
that is
basically
that
what happened.
what's interesting about that is if you read, I know that we spoke about this extensively. We're both Tesla, as Tesla shareholders, big time Tesla shareholders, big Elon Musk guys. We like the innovation going on over there. We like what he's doing with all these different companies and kind of forcing the hand of clunky, outdated industries that aren't too privy on innovating. We like what he's doing. We've been kind of keen to this. If you read his biography by Ashley Vance, aptly titled Elon Musk, you see in there that he has the quote where he says he actually was looking into buying rockets from Russia. That was a big thing because he couldn't get the Americans to sell him rockets. So he was looking into buying Russian rockets and repurposing them for the initial launching and testing of SpaceX, which is really funny because he says something to the extent in a later chapter in an interview he gave to Ashley Vance where he says his family fears that the Russians were going to take him out. So it's a little interesting how things kind of connect here and things kind of circle back. Not that there's really anything.
Well, there's always been this kind of like rivalry with Russia and the
Since
U.S.
the space race, of
when it
course.
comes to space exploration.
Yeah, I mean the Russians beat the Americans to space, right? The whole thing was that they put Sputnik into the air and they put Sputnik into orbit, and they beat the Americans to space, but the Americans beat the Russians to the moon. So there's always been that type of rivalry coming out of the Cold War, and there's a lot of stuff we could talk about with that, but that's not necessarily financial or economical, and maybe that's stuff we could explore in like a different type of environment. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on with why that space race occurred the way it did, and let's just say different groups of scientists becoming involved on both sides that weren't necessarily of like the nationalities of the countries that they were working on the space programs for and things like that. So but it looks like this kid is now Jack Sweeney, as his name is publicly stated. We're not doxing him or anything like that. We're not evil. Yeah, so this is what I saw. Roman Abramovich, the owner of Chelsea Football Club, Chelsea big time club.
Didn't this guy just sell his team? I thought he donated. I thought this guy was good. He donated money to Ukraine. I think he just sold his club.
Yeah, so that might have just been to save face. To be completely honest with you, the guy is a Russian oligarch, and it does look like he is one of Putin's buddies. But this guy looks like he is selling out, and there's a lot of stuff going on here. It looks like he's selling out his stake. He's getting his money, and aptly, wisely done, because it certainly looks like the sanctions are coming in the UK and they're only going to intensify from here. So another big thing that was going on that I don't know if you heard that. That sounded like...
this is what I heard.
Yeah.
Roman Abramovich on Wednesday, he is selling his English soccer team and he will donate all net proceeds to victims of Russia's war in Ukraine, ending his nearly... Oh, so that doesn't... he might be donating it to the Russian side.
Yeah, right. So look, it says that here you go. Let's click that headline. Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich to sell Chelsea Football Club. Interesting. Here we go. This is from Forbes, folks.
Fuck his thought machine. Get this out of here.
Yeah, well, this is why you got to use Brave, folks. So he is not using Brave, and he's getting spammed with ads up the fucking wazoo. And let me tell you something. Ads, there's nothing worse than ads. Ads give you AIDS. Just remember that. Ads give you AIDS. So you got to use Brave, and then you won't get AIDS. By the way, I'm not a spokesman of Brave. I'm sure they don't appreciate me saying that. But it is a very good browser. Built in Chromium. Everything loads.
You see how they put this in quotation marks?
Oh, here we go.
For the benefit of all victims of the war in Ukraine. That means they're being sarcastic. So
and it says, he said the foundation will provide funds towards urgent needs of the victims, as well as supporting the, in quotes, long-term work of recovery. What the fuck does that mean? The long-term work of recovery. That sounds like something.
That's why they're putting it in quotation marks.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Of course. They're being sarcastic. The long-term work of recovery sounds like what I would say to someone if I was just bullshitting them. That sounds like something I would say to my mom if she asked me to pick up my clothes and they were on the floor or whatever.
I think this is a way for his team not to get seized. I think he's handing control of the team to a charity.
Yeah. Well,
we all know
that's just, bullshit. That's not like a real thing. Come on. He's going to control it, but he's going to control it through a
look at that investment, 190 million to $3 billion.
Yeah, that's crazy. What's his stake in terms of equity percentage here in the team?
I think he owns the whole team.
Owns the whole team? That's fucking crazy. What the fuck? So it says Abramovich purchased Chelsea Football Club for $190 million in 2003, and today it is valued at more than $3 billion. Yeah, Chelsea has been dominating the Euro Cup, and they've been dominating the Barclays Premier League. We're not big fans of footy over here in America, but I can appreciate winning, and I can appreciate guys that, go out there and they play their fucking ass off. So let's see what's going on here. Here you go. Boris Johnson. This is big. UK Prime
This
Minister
is the only
Boris
guy that's got
Johnson.
worse head than Trump.
Oh, Boris Johnson is a character. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson levied sanctions against Russian banks, members of Putin's inner circle, and other wealthy Russians who keep their wealth in the country last week after Russian President Vladimir Putin launched an invasion of Ukraine. Abramovich's Saturday announcement that he would give up control of Chelsea to the team's charitable foundation came after Chris Bryan, a member of parliament, said Abramovich shouldn't be allowed to own a soccer club in the UK amid the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and after other members of parliament called for Abramovich himself to be sanctioned. He is an oligarch, folks. He got his money from Putin. He is one of Putin's buddies, and Putin gave him money. And the whole thing is that he's got to kind of do that so no one puts the target on his back, So he's got his crew. He's got his guys running around. And that's kind of the whole thing here. Abramovich himself. Okay, well, here's a good one.
533-foot yacht.
Yeah, yes. So this is what I saw. Yep. So here we go. UK or other country moves to personally sanction Abramovich. Joe Biden announced during his State of the Union. Another thing we're going to talk about later today. This is big time, though. See how everything's overlapping? I love it right now. So many great segues. So during Biden's State of the Union, he announced Tuesday evening, U.S. authorities would work with European countries to target Russian oligarchs by seizing their yachts, luxury apartments, and their private jets. Forbes reports two of Abramovich's yachts, the 533-foot Eclipse and 458-foot Solaris vessels, could be targeted. I actually did see that there was a Russian oligarch whose yachts were seized. I don't believe it was Abramovich.
I was in France.
There are quite a few Russian oligarchs that are in
France.
big trouble right now. That's in France. Do we know who that gentleman was and what his connection is to Putin other than being a Russian oligarch?
We could find out. This is what the good old internet's for.
Exactly. Jamie is definitely earning his salary today. So we're pulling this up here. So here's another thing that I wanted to bring up to you. I don't know if you heard this report. So I heard reports that
Igor.
Okay, so
Igor
hang on. I heard that Russia was moving tanks into Belarus. It looks like Belarus is aligning itself with Russia. So Russia is moving tanks into Belarus, and they're placing them on the Belarusian and Polish border. Did you hear that? And it looks like they're kind of gearing up to invade Poland. At least that's what it appears.
I don't think they would invade Poland because Poland's a part of NATO. I think that it wouldn't be a wise move for them to do because then they're going to have the whole entire NATO.
It certainly looks.
I could start a World War III.
Honestly, it looks like World War III is on the verge of happening. I mean, if you really think about it, like we mentioned earlier with SWIFT, that move to kind of ban Russia, to take Russia off SWIFT, you're putting Russia in a position, you're putting Putin in a position to where they're not going to have anything to lose, right? Like if you just say, fuck you, and you take them off the banking system and they have nothing to lose. I mean, now we see what's going on. They're kind of moving to crypto, right? That's another major thing we could kind of.
Well, I mean, they still have a lot to lose. We could still sanction their oil. We haven't sanctioned Russian oil yet.
We didn't. I assume that we did.
And they get $500 million a day from oil.
Right, but okay. So here's a good question for you. Maybe you know the answer to this because I don't. So now we saw that like a lot of these Russian ADRs you can't buy shares in. So for example, Lukoil is one of the largest Russian oil companies, and the market cap. Actually, revenue last quarter was like $2 trillion or something like that. Is that?
That's in rubles. I don't know the conversion now because the ruble
that's not
has absolutely tanked. Ruble has went down like
right. But here's what's yeah, the ruble is fucking getting hammered here. But at now, as far as anything else is concerned with their balance sheet, right? I would think they'll be, but like obviously the company's Russian, but I would think as an ADR, wouldn't the figures be in American dollars or would they be in ruble on an
No,
ADR?
an
I would think.
ADR is just
I know it's just a
American
way.
depository receipt. That just means a bank buys the share. Say a company is in Russia or whatever, is incorporated in Russia. So you have ADRs and GDRs, and then there's a European version too. So global depository receipts, American depository receipts, and then there's another one where it's just where a European bank holds it. So an ADR is held by an American bank. So an American bank buys the share of the Russian company, and then they give you a piece of paper that says that you own the share of the Russian stock, and then you
Right.
could trade it on an American stock exchange. So
Correct.
it makes it easier to transact in foreign companies.
Yes. So my question to you, and maybe some other people have this question as well. So when it comes to ADRs, though, at least for financial reporting purposes, are figures expressed in the local currency of which the ADR is kind of based out of, or is it
That's
in
what I think. Yeah,
dollars?
it is. I think it's
Okay.
based
Okay.
in
So they're
rubles.
right. That would make sense. So if we actually went to the balance sheet of Luke Oil and looked at it, not saying we should, but if we did, we would see everything in rubles, and then we could obviously like adjust it for that. So that does make sense because the ruble. Let's be real here, the ruble even prior to this whole sanction process that's been going on and a lot of the economic fallout that's that's happened. Like even prior to that, the ruble really wasn't that strong. Like Russia kind of is a shell of itself. They don't really have too much going for them. Their main export is just like oil and natural gas, and the fact that they have a lot of leverage in Europe. I mean, that's pretty much it.
I
But
think
as
we
far
should.
as Mhm.
I think we should backtrack and talk about all the sanctions that Russia's been put on. So you got Apple, right?
Yep.
They sanction Russia. They're no longer selling iPhones in Russia, and there's a
Hmm.
push for them to actually ban the App Store in Russia, which they're probably gonna do.
Right.
Then you got Netflix, who totally pulled out of Russia, and I think they gave up basically $120 million in yearly net income uh, that they would have had from their Russian customers because they were being forced by Russia by March 1st to basically show Russian news on Netflix, and they
Hmm.
didn't want to show Russian propaganda on the network. So they basically proactively pulled out of Russia. So you got Apple doing that, you got Netflix doing that.
Disney was
Um,
another one.
what did Disney do?
Disney canceled any like movies that were going to release in Russia, and I believe they also had some Russian movies they were making that they canceled as well that were in the works. That was big. Also looks like Exxon is pulling out of Russia, and it also looks like Shell as well.
And and BP too. BP sold. I think they had a 19.5% stake in Rosneft, and they sold their stake in that.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know
as
if they actually were able to sell their stake in that yet, or they're still trying to sell their stake. But they said they were gonna divest from Rosneft.
yeah, it also looks like Russia is in such a weird place too, especially with their stock market closing for 5 days. That's kind of crazy. So it looks like they're just kind of making everyone hold the bag here. I don't think it's unbelievable what's going on here with Russia. So a lot of sanctions, a lot of companies following suit. A lot of people aren't happy, man. As it appears, and I know you'll find this funny. People don't like it when you push the world to the verge of starting World War III. Apparently, they're not too fucking happy about that, other than the military-industrial complex, of course. But it looks like all these other companies are not too fucking thrilled. So it's been
Snapchat,
a
no
wild
ads
ride.
from Snapchat in Russia.
What was that? Snapchat?
Snapchat. Oh, look, Microsoft is pulling out of Russia too. Microsoft pullout also includes Xbox games and related products, which will become unavailable in the Russian and Belarusian markets. EA Sports. Wow. CJ Project. Oh, I get that. Um, Oh, Apple's removing Russian news. That's good. Russian propaganda and Sputnik News apps from the App Store for markets outside Russia. Reuters reports that Microsoft, Google, YouTube, and Facebook are also taking action against these state-controlled propaganda networks. Google says it's blocking the network's apps and ads on its websites. YouTube and Facebook are taking similar ad measures. Wow. It's hard to get information into Russia. These Russian citizens don't even really know what's going on. They think that Ukraine provoked the war.
I got to disagree with you a little bit there, because we did see some clips of Russian citizens outside of St. Petersburg protesting. So, and it were quite a bit. Maybe we could pull up some footage of that if you want. Can we find some audio of that? That'd be
I didn't see that. There was Russian citizens protesting in
Yes.
St. Petersburg.
Yes. Correct. You might be able to find that very quickly. I would just look up Russian citizens, Ukraine protests, St. Petersburg. Looks like Russian citizens were protesting, and some people had some interesting signs. We'll put it that way. You go Russian protest. Here you go. This is kind of wild here. Yeah, this was fucking packed out, dude. Let's get some audio
Are they
here.
saying anything?
Listening.
Like, I just want to say, if you're in Russia, right, do not try this. This is very dangerous, right? To be protesting in St. Petersburg with a madman on the loose, right? This could not end well for you. But
Yeah, I mean,
this is
you're
a
looking
very
at
brave
another.
thing to do.
You're looking at, Russia, when you compare them to the West and you compare them to the free world. I mean, Russia, anything goes over there. It's kind of the Wild West. A lot of people like to say Russians are like a different breed of white people, and I definitely agree with that. They're definitely more like China than anything else. I mean, this is some scary shit, especially if you're a Russian citizen. I mean, this could be Tiananmen Square 2.0. That's how crazy that fucking guy is. So, if you're in Russia and you're a fan and you're listening, like, you really got to be careful here and don't do anything silly. You could cheer it on, you could support it, but you don't want to get caught in the wrong place. And it certainly looks like there was a heavy police presence here as well. See the guys in the SWAT gear with the sticks, nightsticks? They're getting ready to shoot people. That's what that is. Getting ready to break up the crowd, There was a better video. Let me see if maybe I saw it on Twitter. It was actually like a really good video. So pause it for a second. That yellow building lit up in the background. I don't know if you see that. You see that yellow building lit up in the background? That's the I believe that's like the St. Petersburg like local government hall or something like that. I don't know the technical.
Oh, where's the Kremlin? That's got to be close by, right?
That's Moscow. Different city.
Totally wrong area, man.
Yeah. I'm sure if you look up Kremlin, I'm sure there are some protests going on there. The Russian citizens are not happy. They don't have a justifiable cause to invade Ukraine. It's just very blatantly an act of aggression. So, clearly, like we've been saying, at least from my take on this whole thing, not to get too political here, but it looks like, to me, Putin's an old man who knows that his days are numbered. The Russian power, those days are numbered as well. If you look at GDP and you compare it to comparable countries in different areas, just to put this into perspective, GDP-wise, take this with a grain of salt. Some people don't even like the figure of GDP. Some people think it's just some made-up bullshit number, and it's tough to sit there and take that at face value, right? But as far as GDP is concerned, if you compare them to the rest of the world, they actually have the same GDP as Italy, which is interesting because if you look at Italy's GDP, a lot of people classify them. Yes, a lot of people classify Italy as almost not a first world country, contrary to what people think, but a second world country. And then just to put that into perspective with how large and how dynamic the American economy is, Russia's GDP and Italy's GDP is the same as the state of Florida, interestingly enough. So the state of Florida, think about that. One state of Florida has an unbelievable GDP So much so that it is, if it was its own country, it would be just as big as Italy and Russia. So that's pretty impressive. Yeah, like we said, the three biggest Russian exports, you got oil and natural gas and good looking women. So that's what they have going for them. And it seems like that's about it. So, how, as an American investor, do you think this situation will affect you? Right. We've already seen some type of downturn in the American markets because there's a lot of people fucking scared shitless about this. But how would you proceed? Because I know how I would proceed, but I'm
Well,
curious to see
this
what you
this
think.
could be very dangerous to the American markets because if we are very dependent on Russia, just not as dependent as Germany, but we're dependent on Russia for oil, and we receive a massive amount of oil from Russia. We don't have to be dependent on Russia, but we are importing a tremendous amount of oil. And over the past couple of weeks, we see the price of gas shooting up. I think
Mhm.
Brent crude oil is even at like 120 bucks now, when it was recently even at 95.
Correct. Yeah. And that's only been within the last 2 weeks. Unbelievable. Here we go. We're looking at CNBC now. Current price of oil as of today is 100.
118.11.
Wow.
And I remember looking at this about a week ago. It was at 90 bucks.
Yeah. And here's the other crazy thing that's gone on. So we mentioned how Biden had his State of the Union earlier this week. He had that on Tuesday, March 1st. Interestingly enough, he made it a point to say that during the State of the Union, and I know you'll find this funny, um, he made it a point to say that they're actually going to start releasing some barrels from the emergency stockpile, which is good, right? Because you think, oh, that would just drive down the price of oil.
Oh,
Do you know how many million barrels they released from the emergency stockpile? You'll find this funny.
how many?
They released, supposedly, Biden says that they released 16 million. Now, a quick Google search will show that America, I believe, uses 30 million barrels a day of oil.
Well, they have to release much more than 16 million. That's
Right.
not
So
enough.
16 million. And it was funny that he said that because obviously the people in his camp, yeah, we're good for half a day. What a joke that is.
They should be
Unbelievable.
releasing hundreds of millions.
Well, what we do need to do is we need to, there are certain people, we don't, like we said, this isn't a political podcast, but there are certain people within politics who aren't calling for the release of these barrels because, there are environmental concerns, of course. But at the same time, I think the more pressing threat is fucking World War III over the
I
environment right
mean,
now. I mean, I hate
I
to
get
say
the
that, but it
environmental
really is the case.
concerns. I get the environmental concerns, but you need oil as a temporary energy buffer, right?
Yep.
Until you're able to develop a sustainable energy source. You can't just rapidly um, get rid of oil because a lot of markets are dependent on oil. The economy is dependent on oil. Factories, etc., need oil. So you need oil as a buffer until you're able to change over to sustainable energy. So with the infrastructure bill that we had, the
Build the
past,
build back better.
what was that? Build Back Better.
Yep.
None of the money was actually going towards infrastructure. What they should have did was they should have put solar panels all across the United States so that we could actually gain energy independence, and then we could have clean energy, and then we could have a good environment, a good economy, and not be dependent on any country, and actually make good geopolitical decisions
Totally
without
agree with you
having
there.
to affect our economy.
Totally agree with you. That would have been a major change too. And I think the best way to get people to kind of shift to renewable energies, particularly energies that are cheap to produce, cheap to consume, and plentiful, is through tax benefits. Of course, I think you have to monetarily incentivize companies to shift towards that. Certainly, looks like Exxon and a few of these larger oil companies have tapped into that market. Whenever there's a major shift in government as far as from one side to another, it certainly seems that the tax benefits in the past seem to help. But as far as reaching energy independence, that should be the most important thing, especially for a nation as large as America and as large of a consumer as America. But now, here's the interesting thing with oil is that it looks like oil at this rate is going to keep going crazy here. And
I
we
think
really
oil is going to
need,
get to like 150.
yeah, I mean, it's going to get wild. We need to buckle up. And at 150, what are we looking at at price per gallon at the pump, right? That's what most people want to know. They're not really too sure. So right now we're looking at 118.11. That was as of earlier today.
This is what you got
Now,
to keep in mind too. Every time that oil went over $100, we had a recession, except during the Korean War.
of course, and when you
And
think
we're
about it,
getting up towards $120 um, a barrel.
of course, and when you think about it too, I mean, it makes sense, right? Logically, well, first of all, nowadays things are a little bit different, but they're not too far different. Um, the internet has certainly come around. The advent of social media has come around. There are a lot of advent of e-commerce has come around. So there are a lot of people consuming goods and products, but they're going about getting them differently and purchasing things differently. So where the economics of that comes in is that less people are traveling, which is big, right? First of all, you also had COVID still going around. Less people are traveling, less people are getting in their cars and driving to retail brick and mortar stores, which brick and mortar at this point is kind of dead for all intents and purposes, but a lot less. Older folks will be traveling, they won't be driving as much. I mean, this is a huge thing. And it is now getting to the point where to be able to drive around on a semi regular basis, it could very well become unaffordable for the average person, which is going to be catastrophic for our economy, considering how much oil we use every day on both a daily basis and
This
even
is
just
what
an
you're
annualized
paying at the
basis.
pumps on average across the United States right here, $4.92.
Yeah, that is horrific. We're really looking at $5 a gallon here. I mean, this is freaking terrible. But you could see the economic onslaught that follows that, where we go from, $2 a gallon to $5 a gallon. No one's driving as much. Everyone's kind of saying this is bullshit. We can't get as much gas as we need, and you could see how that affects our economy. A lot of freight
Even
that's still moved is still moved through. People forget a lot of freight still moved through trucks. As clunky and outdated as it seems, we do quite a bit of trade through freights through Canada. There was that whole protest that was going on.
yeah,
Um,
whatever industry you're in, you're using oil. Every
correct. Yeah.
single aspect of the economy uses oil.
Yeah, it's a big
You-
problem,
you-
and that's why it's so important for America to achieve energy independence. And hopefully, this administration can get that figured out.
this is not good too, because we have, since we had the stimulus checks, right? We're going through a rapid period of inflation, and CPI data is showing that we have like 7.5% inflation, and so the Fed is raising rates. I think they're going to raise rates. They said on March 16th, the March 16 minutes,
Yep.
they're going to raise it a 0.25%. And when we see these rates rise, um, if oil keeps going up, that's not going to curb inflation like they expected to or they wanted to. So you're gonna have rates raising. It's not going to it's not going to be the solution to the problem that they're trying to solve, inflation, because you're going to have oil going up, which is a major inflationary pressure on the economy. And since rates rise, companies cut jobs.
Of course.
They're not hiring as much. The economy slows. There's less growth, and then we go into a rapid period of stagflation, and then we
Yeah.
have major problems in the economy today.
Yeah, and another thing to be considered as well, just from an investing perspective, we know a lot of people are listening to this, particularly in the realm of investing, and we are the anonymous investors, of course, particularly dealing with American equities and debt securities. When you think about it from this perspective as well, whenever the Federal Reserve raises rates, typically the stock market sees a massive sell off. Bonds see a massive sell off. Of course, bonds are inversely correlated to interest rates. So as interest rates go up, bond prices do come down. Certainly looks like we're exiting this golden age of bonds, reaching all-time highs, and it certainly looks that rates are definitely going to be hiked. From what I'm hearing, most certainly March 16th, a quarter point. And then it also appears that we might see about 3 to 4 different rate hikes throughout the year. It's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on.
I think there's got to be more than that. This inflation is persistent, and it's certainly not transitory.
Oh, absolutely not. That whole inflation is transitory thing is just was just the biggest load of crap sold to everyone to kind of ease everyone. People forget the Fed exists, and really what they do every time is they paint a rosier picture than what's really going on. You got to look at the data. You got to look at the trends. You got to go out there. You got to talk to people, man. You got to even on like a micro level. Now, I'm not just saying go talk to people, like go talk to 3 people and then you're like, oh, I'm going to make an opinion. No, like go out there, go talk to people, find out what's going on, go talk to business owners, see how it's affecting their businesses, things like that. Just as an example, a shipping container from China 2 years ago, actually, let's put it this way, a shipping container, an aluminum shipping container coming over from China about a year and a half ago was about $3,000, $3,000 to $5,000 typically. Now, if you wanted to get that same container with nothing in it, it's about $40,000 now. So there's a lot of major things going on here as well.
Wow.
Particularly looking at the used car market, we're seeing inflation hitting that at such an unbelievable rate. It looks like inflation, at least from what I'm seeing, used car prices are up 40% year over year. That was the latest figure I saw. I think now it's probably much higher, particularly within the last month. As we know, there's not too much supply in the market for used cars, which is driving up prices, and it is driving up demand. But naturally, what's also going on is that we see that, at least with new cars, companies cannot produce them quick enough because of the labor shortage that's going on, rapid inflation that's kind of coming in now and really kicking into gear, as well as a chip shortage, which obviously is due to the growth of the crypto market. And certainly a lot of crypto miners are buying up GPUs in bulk to mine crypto because it is most certainly more profitable than, building a gaming computer or building, anything that involves using a GPU for like recreational activity. So it looks like, there is a very scarce amount of GPUs out there right now, and that's certainly affecting quite a few different industries beyond computers. Because if you don't know, really, all modern cars have computers within them that factor in GPU usage to an extent. So the fact that these cars are being built, they're coming onto the assembly line, and production is being halted because they cannot get GPUs in quick enough. Clearly, there are 2 companies that stand out in that space, NVIDIA and AMD. It looks like Intel is trying to make a major push. I did see that they made some acquisitions within the last couple of months, and it certainly looks like they're trying to gear up. But Intel, to me, they're an old man playing a young man's game. It certainly looks like NVIDIA and AMD are much more dynamic. And clearly they have the superior products, NVIDIA being more expensive than AMD and AMD being more affordable. But it certainly looks like NVIDIA, as far as the crypto GPU market is concerned, certainly looks like NVIDIA's got a real stronghold on that, which is kind of nuts when you think about it, because, you're literally talking about one company that is not being able to produce GPUs fast enough with an unbelievable demand, just based on the crypto market, car industry, as well as some other industries. And it's just trickling down to everything, and it's affecting you. Some people have even said, I did see some articles in Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, some opinion sections where some people were touting their car as their best performing asset in their portfolio. I mean, these are strange times, folks. Like, when the stock market's down, but the value of your used car is performing better. I mean, what the hell's going on
Yeah,
here?
alternative assets are performing extremely well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, crypto's
You
done.
got the card market,
Yeah.
basketball cards, sports cards, baseball
Yep.
cards, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, artwork.
Yeah, artwork's been
Yeah,
doing pretty
all
well.
alternative assets are performing extremely well.
Yeah, it seems that they're definitely outpacing inflation, which is pretty unbelievable, because these alternative assets, I mean, typically you look at some of them, they haven't historically performed well in inflationary environments. They've at least paced inflation, but now it seems that they're actually doing better, and it looks like the stock market's lagging behind a little here. I hate this, by the way. They do these stupid pro articles. This information should be
Yeah,
free.
we don't. Yeah, we don't. We were about the democratization. We're about the democratization of information. We don't go for those pro articles.
Yeah, we're not free speech advocates at the Anonymous Investors. We're very happy to support anyone's opinion and support anyone's right to be able to say what they
Well,
want.
Business Insider, it's a total shit
Oh, I'm not saying anything about them. They're shitheads. We don't like them. We don't like
They're a
who's
business
supporting
site,
them.
right? They
Mhm.
just hire frauds. You got
Well, it
Henry
seems
Blodgett,
I got to be honest with you. I have read
complete
some
fraud.
articles from them, and to be completely honest with you, it seems very TMZ esque, and that's not really what you want from a business outlet. You know, you want credible sources, you want things that are thoroughly verified, thoroughly fact checked, and it just seems like they're keen on making business gossip columns, which is not really reliable. And I know that's not what the average person is looking for. And let's just
Yeah,
get down to brass tacks and focus on what's really going on here rather than putting
you know
out
that show.
hit pieces prior to earnings calls a day before, right? Or whatever it was.
Yeah, twice. They did it twice.
Yeah, come on.
Two
That's a
separate
crock of
earnings
shit.
calls. They released a
That's
hit
a crock
piece,
of shit.
and they got the writers. They got Henry Blodgett. They got that girl from Netflix, the new show Anna. I forget her
Yep.
last name.
Yeah,
Anna
Anna.
Sorokin or something like that.
Yeah, Anna.
She also was a
Interesting.
writer for Business Insider. That
Right.
fraud who
And
stole
that girl was
$80 million.
that girl was a complete fraud. And the funniest thing about that is that I was told I haven't watched that series on Netflix. I heard it was pretty good, but as far as that show Anna is concerned, I heard that a very well-known pharma bro by the name of Martin Shkreli had some dealings with her, and he actually has a character that's portrayed in the show. Interestingly enough, I didn't know that, but apparently he had some dealings with her. He went out to like dinner with like a different group of people, and in the process of doing that, it looks like he had some dealings with her through other people and so on and so forth. But that is just such a fascinating story. Anna Sorokin or whatever, is that her name? Sorokin. I don't even know if I'm saying that
Yes.
right. Sorkin. But this girl just
This is
apparently,
what she looks like.
yeah, she just like defrauded everyone, and then now she's just kind of I don't know. Is she walking free? Like, what is she doing? Her fake name was Anna Delvey. That was the name.
I don't even really know the truth, like the full
She's a
story behind this.
Russian. So she posed. At least this is the story I heard. She posed as the daughter of a wealthy German businessman, and the wealthy German businessman was like a
Oh, it kind of sounds like the
fake
Tinder
person.
swindler.
Yes, this is the female equivalent of the Tinder swindler. Exactly. So it is this unbelievable tale. And again, I didn't see the Netflix series, but I've been in the know a little bit on this because I have seen a lot of the news coming out about this. And it's just such a fascinating situation where she basically posed as the heiress of a wealthy German businessman who didn't even exist. And she was kind of like commingling with people who were considered to be elitist within like that New York social circle and outside of New York as well. And she just kind of like finagled her way in there, almost in a weird way, kind of like another guy, minus kids and an island and stuff like that. But just some really fascinating thing where people who can like manipulate their way in and into like these circles and take money from people. It's just real strange, dude. It's a real weird time. Yeah, and by the way, see
She
the
only stole $275,000. I mean, that's
yeah,
a lot of
so
money, but I feel like this was a nationwide story. Like, should have been more than $275,000.
yeah, so one of the main things that happened was that she was hanging out with someone. This was how she got caught, right? This is how blatant this girl was. And this is all alleged, by the way, of course. But so she allegedly was hanging out with someone within that New York elite social circle, and she was hanging out
Was
with
she was going to
someone.
like social clubs or whatever, like those
Yeah,
memberships
yeah,
in Manhattan?
exactly. Yep, yep, exactly. So she
Like,
posed,
for like example, she was like going to like Soho Club and those kind of places.
yeah, maybe like zero bond and stuff like that. If she was able to get in there, sure. Any of
Okay.
those very popular, New York social clubs, things like that, where you could rub shoulders with a lot of powerful people, man. Pretty crazy. But she she went to some type of lunch with one of her friends that she met through this social circle and was introduced to an elderly lady. And the elderly woman um, said, "Hey, Anna, why don't you go pick up lunch for everyone?" and the lady gave Anna her credit card. Okay. So what happened
Why
after
would she just
is
give a random person her credit card?
because she trusts the intermediary. It's like if we were hanging out and you introduced me to Jim, and I know that you trusted Jim and you're like, oh, Jim's my friend, whatever, right?
Yeah, but I
So
wouldn't give Jim my credit card. I would give it to you,
I
but not.
agree. I'm with you. I agree. But she's thinking the whole time, oh, this girl's gonna, you know, go pick up food for us, whatever. She takes the lady's credit card, goes to Bergdorf Goodman, goes to Barney's, goes to all these high end designer stores, and just fucking charges like a bastard and runs up a crazy bill, runs up
Wait,
like
hold on, hold on.
100.
This is why people, right, on your credit cards, right, you have
This
to
is why your
have
fraud protections, people.
two-factor authentication whenever a purchase goes through. There's programs, right, where you have to text yes, and then the sale will go through. You
Yeah,
could have
over a
these
certain
for
amount, people.
sales as little as $1 if you want, where you
Yeah,
have to
what I
verify
would
it over
do,
the text message by saying yes
yes.
and confirming it.
So what I would
So
do,
these
folks,
people
is
didn't have any kind of fraud protection text messages on their phone because these were expensive purchases, and they didn't even get any messages from like Amex or Discover or Mastercard or whatever their credit card company was.
yeah. So this girl took this woman's credit card and just went to town on it, and she charged like over $100,000 in just bullshit purchases, like designer clothes, designer earrings, designer jewelry. Like, just went to fucking town here, and it was unbelievable. But as far as fraud protection, that's a great point. I love that you brought that up because we were touting credit cards the last time we spoke. Comparing them to debit cards. Credit cards are unbelievable for the fraud protection and some of the other different things you could take advantage of, perks and points and whatever. But again, it's all about being responsible. I would say for the average person, any charges that come in over $100, you definitely need 2FA, two-factor authentication, and you need to confirm it, by replying yes to some charge made over $100, or maybe even just make it 100 or more, right? So that's a big thing here. So what are you talking about here with good old Anna? You look like you got something
Well, it
to say.
looks like she was born in Moscow, right?
Very interesting.
And she worked as a truck driver while her mother owned a small convenience store. In 2007, when Sorokin, I guess that's how you say it, Sorokin, was
I'm
16,
just gonna
her
say
family.
Sorkin. Sounds like a normal name that way,
I'm
right?
just gonna say asshole thief. That's what I'm gonna refer to it. Yeah. In
I like it. It's a
2007,
better
when
one.
asshole thief was 16, her family relocated to North Rhine, Westphalia, Germany. There, her father became an executive at a transport company until the company became insolvent in 2013. He then opened an HVAC business specializing in efficient energy use. Sorkin's mother was a housewife. Sorkin attended uh, a gymnasium. What do you attend a gymnasium? What does that even mean? Okay, so this is interesting. I didn't know this. A gymnasium is a German education system. Is the most advanced and highest of the three types of German secondary school. So basically, a gymnasium is a college.
Yes,
Is that what
German
they're trying to
college.
tell?
Yeah, secondary
Oh,
school in EU. For the EU guys out there listening, I'm sure you're probably going to comment down below. But secondary school is that's their equivalent of they call it university or college. Well, college is an American term, but when you talk to people outside of the U.S. or whatever, that's like our way of saying, hey, I'm at college, or like whatever, studying this in
well, they
college.
say like I'm at uni. They try and sound like fancy. They go like I'm at
Yeah, they
uni.
go. Well, they say go. Oh, I'm at university. I'm at university. That's what they say. So yeah, but secondary,
I
in that sense, secondary school is college. Yeah, it is the
Yeah, I
equivalent of
never knew
college.
that gymnasium is a college. I guess.
That you learn something new every day. But here's another interesting thing that we could talk about if you want to explore this. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to talk about with Hannah, but
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
oh, I was gonna say there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the world, man. Like the Federal Reserve finally stepping in and banning employees from trading securities and debts. Like, I mean, don't you think that's long overdue? I mean, that's kind of crazy that they just finally did this. I mean,
What'd they
how are
do?
people? The Federal Reserve employees are officially banned from trading securities, and that obviously includes U.S. equities and U.S. debt. So I think this is long overdue, right? Have you seen some of the scandals that were going on during the pandemic where, the Fed presidents of the, I believe, what is it, 13 district banks for the Federal Reserve? There were quite a few Fed presidents that stepped down within the last year and a half, 2 years. So very interesting stuff. It
So they're
looks
just
to
not allowed
me,
to trade equities anymore. So they
yeah,
have to put their
yeah,
money in a blind trust.
yeah, I think so. I think they're allowed to buy index funds or stuff like that, but I don't think they're allowed to actively trade anymore, which is kind of kind of funny because it's like, don't you think that should have been the rule from day one? Like, you kind of just force everyone into index funds and call it a day or whatever. But I don't,
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
understand why this sudden change.
that sounds good at its face value, but it presents a couple predicaments and challenges. If you prevent people from investing, then you can have people applying for the Federal Reserve job that aren't as qualified because people that are intelligent and they want to save money and they want to invest, they want to be in the market and they want to
Of
see their
course.
money compound and grow. And you're not going to get as qualified candidates because
Hmm.
the people that aren't going to want to invest and that are okay with giving up
Mediocrity.
that right to invest and opting out of the market. Uh, I just lost my train of thought.
You were saying how people who aren't particularly keen about investing in markets will gravitate towards open Federal Reserve positions rather than people who will trade and who are interested in trading and kind of growing their capital and deploying capital in the form of like bolstering
Yeah,
the
basically,
economy.
you're going to get less qualified candidates for the job. The
I think that's
pool
very
is going to get
possible.
smaller.
I think it's very possible, but at the same time, I do think it's a bit of a dichotomy because you really don't want policy leaders and decision makers, particularly at the governmental level, doing things to represent their own financial interest over the interest of the people who kind of put them in that position to begin with. So it's a little tough. It's definitely a tightrope to walk. I don't think people in government should be barred from trading securities, but I will say this: I think they do. I think they should be barred from short selling securities. I don't think anyone in government should be able to short whatsoever. Now, if you want to get into like derivatives and things like that, I also do. I also don't think they should be able to buy puts. And I think an interesting thing to do is kind of just let people be passive investors, right? Like in the form of index funds, I think that's a good example, or in the form of mutual funds, I think that's a perfectly fine example as well. Like just have people, if they do want to invest, force them into, I don't know, I would just say force them, right? Let them choose between, or rather among, a group of hand selected funds that they can deploy capital into. And the good thing is that they are supporting their country by doing so. And if they choose not to invest, then they choose not to invest. I mean, that's their prerogative. But certainly there are tax benefits to doing so. The amount that you'll pay in long-term capital gains is obviously a lot less than what your marginal federal tax rate is for 99% of the population who makes over $100,000 a year or makes over $80,000 a year. So it's certainly imperative to do so. And obviously, there is also a good moral benefit to doing that as well for the people who approach things from that aspect too, because you're making society more productive. You're effectively, buying equity in companies, and those companies are then using said proceeds from you buying that equity to invest in PP&E and as a whole make society and corporations more productive. So I don't really see an issue with it. I'm not saying people shouldn't trade at all. I just think that the government should try to there should be a push to force people into being um, not market neutral or market short or anything like that, but to be bullish on the American economy. And I think that should be one of the big things that should be pushed for, at least in government. I don't really think I'd want someone who's representing me or representing my interest who's openly fucking shorting the economy that's not too good, or maybe even a situation where they're just selling everything prior to a massive global pandemic because they were informed that this situation was going to get a lot worse than advertised, of course, to the general public. I mean, that certainly didn't happen in February of 2020, right? I mean, that would never.
No, that happens all the time.
I know I'm being sarcastic. Of course it happened. Of course it happened. people, they get briefed and then they go, oh shit, I got to sell all my stock before everyone fucking tanks my fucking market. And then all these people sold out early, and guess what? They bought the dip, and now they're sitting pretty. So,
it's like Bill Ackman. He's a
market manipulator, of course. Well,
that.
Billy Ackman, I mean, that was unbelievable what that guy did. For those of you that don't know, Bill Ackman, he's the head of Pershing Square Capital. He's a very good
He made a career out of doing this.
What's up?
He made a career out of doing this. He did it multiple. He did it during COVID.
Tried to do it with Herbalife, and Carl Icahn said, not today, little buddy. And he just fucking squished him like the fucking cockroach he is. Gotta love it. But
then now he's doing it again with Russia.
Yeah. So
he's been saying on the news, he's been going, sanctions are imminent, sanctions are coming. He's been propping it up for the past week. Meanwhile, then he's going and buying assets.
Of course.
As he's saying sanctions are imminent.
It's really been such an unbelievable thing what's been going on with that whole thing with Ackman. Ackman's a weird case, man, because obviously...
The thing is, you got to watch what these people do, not what they say.
Right, exactly. What you do in these situations is much more important than what you say. And that's something to definitely keep an eye on. It's just been really unbelievable in that respect. So it looks like the best way to kind of... So as God mentioned earlier, it looks like the best way to go ahead and take advantage of the situation at hand. You see the Dow kind of imploding here, for a lack of a better term. It certainly looks like we're trending towards correction territory, at least now down being down over 10%. It looks like we're trending towards correction territory. Once we get to 20%, it's not going to be too pretty. But I think the best thing that you could do to take advantage of the situation is just dollar cost average in, man. I think dollar cost averaging is one of the main ways to take advantage of low prices and to take advantage of, any situation with the market where there's any sort of turbulence going on, excess volatility that you might not be used to. I think dollar cost averaging is a fine way to do it. I think in the long run, you really think about what betting on the U.S. stock market is and what betting on U.S. equities is in a nutshell, is essentially what it comes down to is you're betting that the American economy and American citizens will be more productive tomorrow than they will be today. And it certainly appears that we're trending that way, especially with the advent of artificial intelligence. And once you factor in certain scientific theorems and, certain different, known scientific laws like Moore's law, which basically states that over a given period of time, technological improvements will become cheaper to produce and become affordable for the masses. We've seen this with smartphones, we've seen this with televisions, we've seen this with PCs, right? Everyone pretty much has cars. Cars are huge too. Yeah, there are more. The average American household has 3 cars. So, cars. You think televisions? Televisions might be the biggest one. Televisions and cars probably the biggest ones. Computers too. There used to be buildings that had a room that was the size of a fucking computer, which is insane. There's been a lot of improvement in that aspect as well. But Moore's law is effectively going to make it so that things will become more and more affordable. I'm sure there will be some displacement with AI, but think about what happened during the Industrial Revolution, right? And the advent of the automobile in the mid to late 1800s. All the horse and carriage guys, those guys, they just found other jobs, right? They just went to go work and do other things. So, jobs are created and destroyed all the time. It's just the nature of the economy. And I think the best way to take advantage of that is just to try to position yourself in a field where you're expected to see growth and you won't see too much displacement. Right now with truck drivers, that's a huge area that is in all likelihood going to see some type of displacement in the next 10 to 15 years. We obviously love our truck drivers. Those guys are great. But, it certainly appears that as companies like Tesla and Ford and GM start really focusing in on automation, automated car driving, it's going to be a big thing. Tesla is, I believe, what was that? Walmart that placed a big order with Tesla for the automated fleet. Is that what we heard?
The
During one of the
semis, yeah, the
announcements?
semis.
Semis,
They're
yeah.
not going to start building the semis for a while. I think it's
Yeah,
going to be a while.
Those Elon Musk timelines are a little fucking nuts. He says like 2 years, and 2 Elon years is like 5 normal person years. So, take his timelines with a grain of salt. And I think the reason he does that is because he likes to try to motivate everyone to work a little harder and to get things done a little faster. But I think also one of the main flaws in that rationale is that he assumes that everyone works as hard as him, and I don't think that's the case at all. So
Well, you set the bar high, and then you try and get as close to it as you can, instead
yeah,
of
I
setting the
like.
bar low and then eclipsing it.
I'm in the camp of under promise, over deliver. So if I'm telling you I'm going to get something done in 2 weeks, I like to get it done and turn it into you in like a week and a half.
Yeah,
I'm in that camp. I'm the under promise,
that's
over
like a
deliver.
bullshit artist. That's not
Well,
a productive person. That's a bullshit artist.
no, that's a very productive person.
That's
Under promise,
basically
over
like
deliver.
that's basically bullshitting the person so that you look better.
No, absolutely not. Because there's something that I know a lot of you military guys know, but maybe
That's like a
God
That's like a
doesn't know.
Wall Street kind of way of thinking. Like we're gonna say the earnings right are gonna be lower. We're gonna provide lower
Oh, you're
guidance
talking about lowering guidance, and then they just crush it.
so that when it actually comes out, our stock is good. That's like Timmy
Lowering
Cook
guidance, is that what you're
is
referring
a
to?
chief proponent of that.
You're referring to lowering guidance, is that right?
Yeah,
Well, as far as under promise, over deliver, it does come into a certain extent where it is very beneficial to those who do it and practice it. Particularly in the event of like you're working on something new and you don't really know what to expect. You do want to give yourself a little bit more time to perfect what you're working on. Like if you're tasked with working on a project and you could do it in a week, but you kind of want to make sure you get all the kinks out and you get all the bugs out. You kind of might want that extra week of buffer, especially if the other person isn't really going to mind it, and you really want to perfect what you're doing and kind of leave no stone unturned there. So I could totally see why people do it. And then there's there's other law that I know that some of you guys in the military are familiar with, but it's called Murphy's Law, and it essentially states what can go wrong will go wrong. So usually with anything that you're working on, you'll encounter some type of obstacle, and maybe it will seem insurmountable or it'll seem something that's seemingly impossible to get past, but you'll get past it. But it just gets to the point where you don't think you're going to run into anything of that nature, and then you end up running into something of that nature, and it gets a little fucking annoying. So that's just what it comes down to.
yeah. Business is business. Everything doesn't go smoothly. But
Yeah, I mean,
you can't be of the mindset of setting the bar low and then passing the bar, because you'll never achieve great goals. The bar's too low.
yeah, you're right. Well, that's that whole Grant Cardone thing, 10x, right? That's what that fucking guy touts constantly. He's saying, "Hey, you want to make 100,000? Fuck that. Make 1,000,000. You want to make 1,000,000? Say you want to make 10 million. Fuck it." And I like that.
Right.
There's a saying that my old elementary school used to have. They had this mural up, and I constantly saw it in gym class. It was in the gymnasium, and not the gymnasium we were referring to earlier with the Germans, but an American gymnasium where you play basketball, you play dodgeball, you run around like a lunatic, like a little crackhead kid, basically. But they had this mural in the upper portion of the gymnasium, and it said something to the extent of like, shoot for the moon, because even if you fail, you'll land amongst the stars, or something like that, which is
That's
pretty
right.
corny. Which is pretty corny, but when you think about the main premise of that, I constantly read that, and as a child, I was like, well, that's an interesting thing to say. But now looking back on it, my perspective is obviously a little bit different as I've matured, and I kind of look at that and I'm like, all right, well, think about what they're saying here. They're basically saying set the bar ridiculously high, because then even if you come somewhere close to that, you're going to achieve more than when you started. And I could totally see that's where Elon's coming from with that. Where does the phrase "that's corny" come from?
I don't have to talk about this. I just wanted to know.
Funny. The etymology of corny. Interesting. I didn't know Stack Exchange had like an English section there. English. Very interesting. Cornball, 1940s. Interesting. It is a euphemism
Oh, it
for.
came from that show.
Yeah, well, it says the term cornball, 1940s.
Term is simply based on the wide reach of corn in U.S. agriculture. Farmers grow it everywhere, so it became synonymous with American farming muscle world people. Show hee haw, bleeding corn in much of its iconography, while gleefully indulging in corny. Okay, so it came from the show hee haw. Wow, that's a 50-year. That phrase has lasted for 50 years from a show that was on in the 70s. Wow,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and it's been traveling through generations.
that's definitely integrated itself into American culture. It doesn't look like it's going anywhere, right? Now the new word is
Uh-huh.
cringe. Everyone says cringe, but that's more of like a trendy type of thing. Everyone says, "Oh, that
That's
guy's a
bozos.
cringe
Bozos
warrior."
say that. That's cringe. That's
Cringe.
a
Oh, I'm
bozo term.
cringe. Yeah, cringe is
Oh,
a little
cringy.
quick. Cringe is definitely like Gen Z for sure. That's like a
I
Gen Z.
like cornball.
I like bozo. Bozo might be my favorite word in the English language. I'm not even kidding you. Bozo is such a phenomenal word. I mean, you look at that guy. That guy's a fucking bozo. I mean, imagine how that guy feels. You're like, listen, you fucking bozo.
Oh man, he's gonna see this podcast.
I'm not
Sorry,
calling
mom.
him a bozo. Come on. I'm just saying, bozo is such a like an exciting word to say. Bozo. You just go, hey, look at that fucking bozo.
Wow, look at this. China is gonna raise. This is very scary. They can take over Taiwan.
Yeah, China is essentially saying that they do want to take over Taiwan. And
What was the
it
place
makes
they took over in 2019 or 2020? They took over what was that other country they took over?
mm, well, you're
Oh,
talking about Hong Kong. They took Hong
Hong
Kong
Kong.
back. Yeah,
That's
Hong
right.
Kong. But that was see the problem with that is that people were
That wasn't a
protesting that.
country though. Hong Kong's a city, right? I don't
No,
even know how that
Hong
dynamic
Kong was a
works.
province, and it is a city, but Hong Kong was like that southern region right on the water, very important trade hub in that Asian region. And the big problem was that the English controlled it for the longest time. From what I could tell, people who were living in Hong Kong under the English control liked the English, and they didn't have anything to say that was unfavorable about the English. But the main thing that was going on was I did notice that people were protesting what was going on with China. So the English actually signed this deal in the 90s with China where they effectively said they would pull out of that region and hand the territory over to China. And people were foaming at the mouth about that, evidently, because they did not want that to happen because of the Chinese extradition laws that were introduced. So essentially, what would happen is people who were arrested in Hong Kong would be extradited to mainland China and treated as mainland Chinese citizens. So you're literally talking about a
Okay, so I'm
major
assuming
shift.
Hong Kong probably had less stringent laws then
Of
than
course,
the mainland.
Hong Kong was much more similar to America and much more
I know
similar
it
to
was
the UK.
democratic, but they China had to have some sort of control over it,
Of course,
its
they signed
province.
that agreement in the 90s, and the UK just wanted to get the fuck out of there. And that's essentially what happened. The UK got out. Hong Kong was turned over to the Chinese, and now, unfortunately, they are under the rule of a totalitarian government that clearly doesn't care too much about its people, to be completely honest here. Um, you know,
So what
and
happened to all those casinos that were in Hong Kong and everything?
oh well, I
Shut
mean,
down.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not too sure. But I will say this. I mean, that Macau region is booming, right? Unbelievable. Isn't that like the largest gambling region in the world? Macau? How's Macau
Um,
doing? I heard
no,
that it's bigger than Vegas. Is that true? Can we fact check that?
I think no. I think there's actually a bigger one.
Mm,
Um, it was actually built by Chinese, but it was in an American province.
really? I thought it was Macau.
American. What are those like Guam? What is that? What,
Territories?
province? Yeah,
American territories. Is that what you're thinking?
territories.
All
Yeah,
right.
I
So
gotta just
yeah,
go into a search.
Macau's a
It
pretty
was
big region. Um, Now where was this one?
oh, Mariana Islands. I think that's what it was, right? Yeah.
Really? Northern Mariana Islands. I know that they have some good tax laws there. I don't know too much about anything else. So you were saying that they started to build this region up, the Northern Mariana Islands. Interesting. I know that this is in the Pacific, so very interesting. The Chinese building up the Northern Mariana Islands.
This casino, I remember there was something about this. What's this casino called?
How a Chinese casino conquered a piece of America. That's a long video, 13 minutes. Do you remember the gist of it? Or here you go. Bloomberg, boom. They've got a right there, second link. Yep. Underneath it.
Sapin.
Oh, Saipan. Okay, click on that. Let's read the Bloomberg article. Let's skip through it. How a Chinese casino conquered a piece of America.
Construction workers maimed and killed. Millions paid to the government. Ending a graveyard shift at the Lone Hospital on Saipan, the exceptionally remote U.S. island, when 4 Chinese men arrived with a body. They figured they had with them a middle-aged man naked. What the fuck? Is this at the casino?
What is that? Wait. Go back to that demographic at the top. Hang on. What is that? Saipan. Oh, okay. Saipan is a part of the Northern Mariana Islands. You're right. It looks like it's one of the islands that's included in that cluster, right? And it's, what is that, 2,100 miles to Macau? It's very far. By the way, that's roughly the distance to Florida. Little more, but that's basically
right here.
I'm going to Florida and a little more.
A temporary storefront, the company Imperial Pacific was handling more than $2 billion a month in VIP pets. And at the construction site, it was building a gargantuan casino with a group of hundreds of trainees. Scores of them working illegally on tourist visas. So many laborers were getting hurt. Okay, so this casino never actually opened. So I guess Macau is the biggest casino. But yeah, but there was a lot of shady stuff going on with this casino in Saipan. I think they had like Chinese slaves working on
allegedly shady stuff going on from what we heard, for sure.
And there was like money laundering and a whole bunch of stuff going on here.
What is this? The director of the CIA and FBI? What the fuck? What is this? Here, I'll read this. Remarkably, the company has also enjoyed the support of a gold-plated roster of American politicos. Its advisors and board of directors have included former directors of the CIA, FBI, and former governors of Mississippi, New York, and Pennsylvania. What the fuck is going on there? Once you get the 3-letter agencies in, you got former directors of those 3-letter agencies on board with you, you're in, You're in. You're in there like swimwear, as they say.
The Mariana Islands have some of the best tax benefits in
definitely
the world.
Definitely the best kept American tax benefits. Everyone touts Puerto Rico, but a lot of people tout Puerto Rico.
But that's what they touted. Whenever you hear people touting,
exactly, that's highly touted by guys like Peter Schiff.
Whenever it's touted, that means the big boys
are going to be gone.
That's
what that means. It's going to be gone. So what happened with Puerto Rico, folks, if you don't know, Puerto Rico, if you move there, it is a Commonwealth of the United States of America. There obviously was a war fought about no taxation without representation. So evidently, the Puerto Ricans do not have to pay federal. Exactly. That's what I said. So the Puerto Ricans do not have to pay any federal income tax because they do not have representation in Congress. Interestingly enough, Puerto Rico itself imposes a 4% flat tax on everything regardless of income. Additionally, you are not responsible for paying into FICA or Social Security or Medicare or any of those other great government programs that we have here in America.
Right.
If you live
the only other way
Rico,
to get out of that in America is if you are
Amish, Mennonite is another one.
Amish or Mennonite.
Right.
You can't become an Amish. Amish is very hard to convert to. You have to learn like their language, Pennsylvania Dutch, and do it a whole bunch of things. It's much easier if you wanted to avoid FICA, which I don't suggest you try and do. But if you convert it to a Mennonite, it's much easier.
Or Anabaptist. I heard the Anabaptists as well get that exemption.
Correct.
That is another. And
their theory for avoiding FICA is because these are very tight knit communities.
They don't believe in
insurance, and they see Medicare and Social Security as a type of insurance. And basically, the people of the community and of the church support each other if something were to go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a great community to be a part of, to be honest with you. I think a lot of people should come together like that. I mean, you could definitely learn from that. Another thing though is that they're very slow to embrace like technological improvements. But if you really think about it, if you had like a sect of Mennonites or Anabaptists that rapidly adopted emerging technologies and kind of still kept those same ideals, I mean, sounds like I'd sign up with them tomorrow, to be honest with you. It sounds like a great group.
But what were you saying about Puerto Rico? 4% tax on.
Yes. So there's a 4% flat tax on all income that's derived. So if you're an American, you're looking to move to Puerto Rico, you might say, well, that's great. Now that 4% is on earned income, of course. But now you'd say, well, I'm an American, I'm moving to Puerto Rico, right? For the sake of thought experiment, let's say you're an American, you have $10 million invested, and you want to move to Puerto Rico to kind of get out of paying taxes. Let's say your annualized income, gross income is $1 million. You'd pay that 4% tax. So the 4% of $1 million is what, $40,000? You'd pay $40,000 a year in taxes. Pretty reasonable amount of money, considering you're making $1 million. I mean, Jesus Christ, you have a lower standard of living. So obviously, for those reasons, you have quite a large group of institutional investors, very prominent figures in the financial space, taking advantage of this. The first major guy I could think of that kind of took advantage of this was John Paulson from Paulson and Co. Very prominent, very well-known hedge fund
And
guy.
the big benefit of this is that you don't have to give up your U.S. citizenship. So there are other
Exactly.
areas where
You
there
can
are other
pack up
areas
and
where they have lower overall taxes, but you would have to revoke your U.S. citizenship. So this is
absolutely,
a route to go if you don't want to get rid of your U.S. citizenship if you're a U.S. citizen, because
exactly
U.S. citizens have to pay tax on their worldwide income. It doesn't
correct.
matter if it's made outside the United States.
Correct, and they also have to perform what's called FBAR, which is foreign bank account reconciliations, where you have to disclose any foreign investment in bank accounts that you have offshore to the good old IRS, everyone's favorite three-letter agency, right behind the NSA. The NSA is always watching you, and they're watching me.
I don't even know who that is. And
NSA, yeah, I'm not too sure what that is either, but I don't know why I said that. But
I don't even think they exist.
as far as everything else is concerned, Logan Paul was in the news about that, and what he did with that fight with Floyd Mayweather was another smart move.
Gringo,
Maybe we could
gringo.
explore that.
People get pissed off when the gringo move to Puerto Rico.
Well, I'm sure that that's the case, but as far as he did that, but he did that on the advice of Peter Schiff, everyone's favorite gold bug, and Perma Bear on the U.S. economy. And by the way, dude hates Bitcoin. Like, come on, son. You're worth like $100 million. Just freaking stick $1 million in Bitcoin and just shut up, man.
Gold's one of the worst assets of all time.
Gold doesn't even pace inflation. So that whole gold is like an inflation hedge is like a completely false narrative. It doesn't even pace inflation. And like you said, equities will continue to stomp gold. It does not matter. Gold,
all the citizens of Ukraine fleeing with gold. I don't know how they would carry it, but are they
right.
fleeing?
And here's the other thing: gold can be confiscated from you. You need something that has the portability of gold that cannot be confiscated, and you need something that has a fixed supply. Gold is infinite. People don't understand this. Gold is infinite. The Earth's core, and particularly the mantle, is lined with gold. Gold is a very highly manipulated asset. Excuse me, not even really an asset, a highly manipulated commodity. And truth be told, I mean, there are different parts of the planet that we haven't really been able to explore due to the lack of technological advancement. And gold could be prevalent in those areas. I mean, people have come out, there have been scientists that have come out, climatologists that have come out and spoken about this. There is actually gold lining on the bottom of the ocean that we have not been able to tap into due to technological advancements. There are also parts of the ocean much further down than we've ever gone that have life that we've never even seen, and we've never even been down there because our technology isn't prevalent enough to be able to explore those parts of the ocean. So given any rate of technological improvement over any period of time, one can assume that at some point in time, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, we're going to be able to tap into that gold. And now what do you do with the supply? What happens from there?
But there's stockpiles. They don't even sell it. Even if they don't tap into it, there's gold that people don't even sell that the miners just hoard. Because if they sold it, they would collapse the market.
Exactly. Just like diamonds is a highly manipulated market. You're talking about something that gold, I will
Beers,
give it.
diamonds.
I will give it this. Yeah, De Beers was created by Cecil Rhodes. That's a whole nother topic we could explore at some later point. Maybe right after this. But gold, the one thing that, as you're talking about, it is definitely a highly manipulated market. But at least gold, the one redeeming quality is it does have intrinsic value, right? It has some industrial uses. I guess you could use it. I mean, I guess you could use it to make jewelry, but I guess I don't know. Would you? I don't think jewelry is a good use of gold, to be completely honest with you. Really don't. I don't think jewelry is a good thing at all. As far as using it as like an investment or anything like that. I think it's just a stupid way of like people justifying spending a lot of money on like a chain or like a necklace or something is just like using gold. So, I mean, I certainly hope that they're not wasting their money on things like that. It just seems really silly,
You got to get fresh.
Feel free to do that. And look, if you're going to get fresh, just make sure you buy products from companies that I support that are publicly traded. And I'm all for it, man. Just keep boosting my earnings and keep boosting the value of my equities. And I don't give a shit. Get as fresh as you want. Run yourself $1 million in debt, boosting my equity positions. I don't give a fuck. It's all you. But now, as far as anything else is concerned with gold, I mean, like we were saying, a very highly manipulated market. Got to be very careful. And the U.S. government, people forget they did confiscate gold. And realistically, people tout gold and they go, "Oh, well, it doesn't."
Gold's been confiscated throughout history.
Of course,
Romans got their gold confiscated. The
Germans confiscated a lot of gold too. People forget about that.
The Swedish confiscated the gold of the Germans.
Yep. You're thinking of the Swiss. The Swiss confiscated.
The Swiss.
Germans,
the Swiss, yeah. He confiscated the gold of the Germans. Americans confiscated it. Basically, gold's got confiscated throughout history by other civilizations.
And that's the allure of crypto. It's such a new space. It's such an innovative space, and there's going to be a lot of major technological advancements coming out of that space. Of course, this is not investment advice. This is purely for entertainment purposes, but I would just say this. There's going to be a lot of technological innovation, and already there has been a lot of technological innovation that's come out of that crypto space. And, we're expecting crypto to be huge. And when we say huge, we mean what is the global wealth figure? Is it 500 trillion now? I believe it is. But for argument's sake, let's just say it's 500 trillion. We'll assign a nice round number to it. Gold's market cap, no one really knows what it is, right? Because how do you know? Because it doesn't hit a banking system, and there's not like there's any sort of repository or database to log all of the gold that's in circulation. So naturally, what would happen is we don't know what that figure is, but it's estimated that it's anywhere from 9 to 10 trillion. Let's be a little optimistic here. Let's call it $10 trillion. At that point, for Bitcoin, if Bitcoin reaches the market cap of gold, each Bitcoin is worth $454,000, which is very optimistic.
Which it should surpass the market cap of gold because it's much more valuable. It's transferable. It's divisible.
The value in Bitcoin is that it is inherently deflationary, which means that there will not be any more Bitcoins minted after the 21 million in circulation, which if you do believe Satoshi took 1 million coins out of circulation for himself, which I believe is very much possible, you're really talking about 20 million. And that's before factoring in all the Bitcoins that were lost on wallets that people lost access to. I mean, you're really talking about, think about that. Think about how many people bought Bitcoin very early on. They kind of were like, I don't really know what this thing is. I don't give a shit. And they lost access to their wallets. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, there was a Wired article that was going around somewhat recently, where there was an early writer who he had a wallet and his Bitcoins were stored on this hard drive and he lost access to the hard drive. I think he threw it out. And now that value of Bitcoin is like 20 million or something. And it was a writer for Wired. He threw this hard drive out and now he's excavating a land.
More and more people are going to lose their Bitcoin over time.
Yeah,
more and more.
Yeah, especially early on, and sadly, there are people who pass away and they lose access to it. I mean, obviously, they passed away, right? But their family members don't even know that they own it or whatever, or they don't know how to access it. So these are things that you have to factor in. These are things you got to be careful of. These are things that you got to have people you trust, and you got to kind of like, say, hey, you first of all, don't give away your seed phrase to anyone. I think that's very important. But as far as like, moving things to cold storage or moving things to exchanges, you got to have some people you trust. Like, you got to have at least one person in your life that you could trust. God forbid something goes wrong. And you've got to have good judgment here. I think that's number one, right? If you're listening to this podcast, the odds are you do have good judgment, and you have good judgment to the point where you're willing to listen to new ideas. You're willing to listen to, two guys just rambling on about economics for 2 hours, on a call, just chilling. But at the same time, got to have good judgment. You got to have someone you could trust. You got to have someone you could rely on, because, Bitcoin is very bullish on Bitcoin. We think it's definitely worthwhile. Any financial advisor telling you to not invest into the crypto space, in my opinion, is not to be trusted.
Well, what else are you going to invest in?
I
invest
think
in, you buy land, right?
main,
You have to get away from inflation, because if you have cash, say you have cash, right, you're losing monetary value each and every year. You lose whatever you want to
every
put a
day.
number on.
Every day you're
7%,
losing. Every day you're losing
8%,
purchasing power.
9%, 10% a year, whatever it is, depending on your area and the economy. In Turkey, you might lose as much as 80% a year. In the U.S., you might lose maybe 5 to 6%, depending on your area. And inflation changes depending on what you want to buy.
Yep.
If you want to buy a house, or if you want to rent, your inflation factor is going to be different.
Absolutely.
But basically, so you look at all the things you could buy. You buy property, right? Do you really own the property? If you have to pay the government property tax, you lose 2% a year to that. If you own stocks, it's not scarce. It's not scarce, because the
Companies
CEO
can dilute you at any point.
They can just raise more money and sell more stocks and dilute you.
Dilute you, yeah.
So do you really have control of your money if someone can just dilute you out of your holdings? No. So you can't really own land,
Right.
because you got property tax. Land isn't scarce anyway.
Land. Well, how about
see,
this? Terraforming is going to become a major thing.
They're building on water, so land isn't as scarce as people think. Yeah, exactly.
And
terraforming.
And here's the other thing too with land that you didn't really mention, but it is definitely worth mentioning. There is such a thing called eminent domain, which means that the government at any point can seize your land from you, pretty much, and use it for however they please. And that's just kind of tough shit, motherfucker.
That's right.
Motherfucker
can they seize your Bitcoin? No, they cannot.
You know what you do? Well, no, they can't. They can't seize your Bitcoin, because when you were partying,
I go to my grave.
No,
I get shot. Nobody seizes my Bitcoin.
So here's what happens. The government, if you own land, the government will say, "Hey, buddy, we need this land. There's oil there or whatever," and they could just force you off the land. And then you're like, "Well, what the fuck? Like, what are you gonna do when people with guns from the government show up and you're outnumbered 10-1? I mean, you're not gonna fight them. You're gonna go, well, shit, I don't want to die. You're gonna give them the land, and then that's it. Now, if the government comes through your
you don't even have the option, because even if you do fight them, right, you die, then they just take it when you're dead.
Yeah, pretty much. They're taking it anyway.
Say someone points a gun to your head with Bitcoin, right? It's in your mind. They can't get it out of your mind. If you're tough-willed and you refuse to give it up, then they shoot you and you're dead. Well, I died with the Bitcoin, and if I can't have it, nobody can have it.
That's right. So here's the other thing too that's worth mentioning. If anyone comes through your Bitcoin, big Bitcoin conference coming up in April, the major Bitcoin conference. We're seeing that the president of El Salvador is going to be there, as well as Michael Saylor, Jack Dorsey, and a few other characters. So the CEO of Strike is going to be down there as well. Major players in that crypto space. And Winklevoss twins, as usual, they're always down there every year. But this big Bitcoin conference is coming up. This big Bitcoin conference is coming up in early April. If you're interested in that, you can go online and look that up. I do want to attend, but it seems like it's a little too late to get tickets as prices have gone up. So I probably won't attend, but I will be watching from the live streams. I'm sure we'll talk about it here on this podcast, because we're focused on crypto. We do like this space a lot. We're very bullish, as we said earlier. But it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Now, as far as like what happens to your crypto, I mean, look, you got this conference coming up in a month. Let's say someone approaches you after the Bitcoin conference in April, and they said, "Give me your Bitcoin." And you know what you tell them? You tell them, "I went to the Bitcoin conference in Miami down, in the month of March, or excuse me, in the month of April. 2022, and I was partying with Michael Saylor on his yacht, and my gold wallet fell off the boat, and I lost I lost everything in a boating accident, and that's kind of just what you tell people, and it's become a little bit of a meme, but at the same time, it's just like
I mean,
proof
I
that
wouldn't
I
even tell
still own
people
it.
that. I would just tell them, right,
I
suck my
they,
dick,
you know what?
bozo.
No, you
You're
know
not
what you
getting
tell
it.
them. Here's what you tell them. Here's what you
You
tell
tell
them.
them,
You
suck
don't.
my dick, bozo.
No, you don't tell them that. You can tell them that, but a better move is to just be like, "What's a Biddlecoin?" Well, I don't know what that is. Biddlecoin? What are you talking about, Biddle? You just pretend you don't know what that is. You go, "What is that shit? I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is." So then that's it. You just pretend like you have no idea, or you say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I think you have me confused with another individual," and then that's it. And you walk away.
You want to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible.
We're both as we said earlier, we're both very bullish on crypto. We like the space. Any financial advisor telling you that you should, and again, this is just for entertainment purposes, of course.
It's revolutionary. It's revolutionary.
The
Every other currency, right?
technology is very disruptive. Early on, I can say this that both myself and God, we were very critical of Bitcoin in its early stages. It didn't look like there was much use, but we did see the potential there. But at that time, we kind of just saw, at least that run in 2017, we kind of saw it as pump and dump, and it certainly looked to be true at that point in time. There wasn't any mainstream adoption. It just looked like it was people just buying in based off of FOMO. But now you're talking about situations where there's real world applicability with crypto. We're seeing it in Ukraine. We're seeing it with Russia. Russia is supposedly um, using Bitcoin and other crypto to bypass sanctions. And we're seeing massive amounts of donations to Ukraine. I believe they've raised
I think
almost
that's fake
50.
news. I don't think that's possible, but that's another
What?
story.
Russia,
The Russian economy is way too big to use Bitcoin as their
that might
currency.
just be a narrative to ban it. Yeah, you're right. That's something to think about. That's some food for thought. But we do know this. This has been confirmed. The Ukrainian government has received over $50 million in Bitcoin donations. So people are now seeing how unbelievable and transformative this technology is. And I mean, you're literally
Well, I've been
talking about a
saying this for years
situation.
now. I've been saying this for years. Get Bitcoin into the citizens of North Korea. I've been saying this but for a different country.
Yeah,
Saying it for years.
yeah. I mean, this
Now they're getting it into the hands of the Ukrainians.
like we said, the technology is innovative. It's so transformative, and it's something that we definitely need to tout, and we need to use it as much as we can, and it needs to be a viable option for legal tender. Now we're also seeing that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this, Wyoming.
You control the currency, you control your freedom.
Yeah, yeah, and we love how it's deflationary. It encourages people to save, kind of gear more towards conscious capitalism, not just excessively wasting money. You know, helping people take back. excuse me, helping people take back their financial freedom, helping people reach their financial goals, and that's what is the most important thing out here.
Well, look at that. Look at every other currency has been inflationary. You had at the earliest stages you had people using rocks as currency,
Yep,
and
you
they
had
would
people
shape it
using
a certain way.
seashells. Seashells is
You
a
had
big
people
one.
using seashells, right? That's plentiful.
Spices and dyes and stuff like that. I think the
Spices, and they
Phoenicians
went
used
to like silver, gold, bronze.
the
Uh,
Phoenicians used dye, right?
yeah, dye on their
Mhm.
ships. Then they went to then you had people using paper currency. Then even in the 1930s, right, you had people using script, which that's a whole bunch of baloney. You had mining companies basically controlling the currency of their workers. So basically, they would pay their workers in something called script, and then they would be like these little mining towns. So the money would only be able to be used in the mining towns, and the company would own all the shops in the mining towns. So they would pay him script, and then the employees would buy stuff in the mining towns. So basically, they owned the employer owned the currency, and they own the stores, so they can control the inflation rate, and thus control how much real wages they were paying their employees. Needless to say, this was outlawed in I think that the late 30s. They got rid of that because basically the employers were taking advantage of the employees. They were working for pennies on the dollars. But basically, if you look at the U.S. Dollar, basically that's legalized script on a nationalized scale, where the government's controlling your wealth and basically inflating away your money, and all the stores and everything like that in the U.S. economy. They're just inflating away your wealth, just like the mining companies. This
And
is a
that's
legalized right thievery going on in the world today, and people are just accepting it.
passively accepting it too. If you look at inflation relative to wage growth within the last 40 years, we've seen that wage growth has not paced inflation. We're seeing inflation has a runaway, and we're also seeing inflation at such an unbelievable rate. Like, I mean, it's getting to the point where it's getting out of hand. So much so that you even see prominent figures like Charlie Munger has come out. I don't know what
Yeah,
happened there, God, but something happened.
what
Sounds like
happened?
you had a tumble or something. I don't know. There was some weird static.
What?
You better check yourself before you wreck yourself, motherfucker. But anyway, my main point is that I'll tell you this though, which was very interesting. Um, we saw that even prominent figures were warning about inflation, so much so that Charlie Munger came out. I don't know. Did you see this in the headlines? This was big time. Charlie Munger came out and he said that he predicts the US dollar's value within, what is it, the next 100 years or so will be 0%. It will have no value. He's predicting a
Yeah, that makes
fully
sense.
collapsed
You
dollar
inflate away your
in
money
the
probably
last
every about
within the
25
next
years.
100 years. How unbelievable is that? And this guy's a fucking fossil saying this, and yet he's still sitting here criticizing crypto. Him and his buddy Warren Buffett, they're calling it rat poison. You know why? Because they're too fucking old to understand it. I
Well,
like Warren
I don't
Buffett.
know. I think
I like
they're
Munger.
they're um they're objective, right? They've been doing this throughout their whole career. They talk down their investments so
Of
that they
course.
can buy it and accumulate more. So if you look at what he's saying, oh, it's rat poison, it's this and that. But then he's
Yep.
buying into a
A bank. That's
cryptocurrency
right. The crypto
neobank
bank.
in Brazil.
Yes, that was
So
big.
basically, actions speak louder than words. So is he really against crypto if he's buying into a crypto neobank?
That's true. Let's read this headline here. I'm looking in Fortune. So here we go.
Share the screen.
I'm
Share
on
the screen,
Fortune right
Mr.
now.
Joe
Here,
Exotic.
this what's up?
Mr. Joe Exotic, you have to share the screen so that we can show the people,
True.
our
Very true.
community.
Well, actually, I'll let you pull that up. So I'll just read the headline here, and then you could pull up the story in the meantime. Here we go. This is from February 16th of 2022. Years after calling Bitcoin rat poison, Warren Buffett just invested $1 billion in a crypto-friendly bank. How interesting. Here's another thing, too. Warren Buffett, February 15, 2022. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway bought $1 billion of Activision stock just weeks before Microsoft's surprise acquisition. Isn't that interesting timing? Very interesting. They bought shares of Activision just weeks prior to Microsoft buying them out. Isn't that interesting? For the longest time, Buffett has touted the fact that he has not owned shares within Microsoft because of his connections with Bill Gates and their close friendship.
Well, he made a very smart move,
He was
actually
very
selling off Visa and Mastercard.
he was oh
Those
absolutely
companies, they're done. They're $300 billion companies that they're gonna
the
compress,
oh
to
absolutely
levels
the
we never seen before.
another thing
You
too
can't
with
be charging
crypto.
people 3% of a transaction
Another
and
thing
getting away
too.
with it. PayPal's going to get screwed. Mastercard's going to get screwed. Amex and all these payment processors are going to get screwed. You shouldn't be able to charge if someone buys something for $1,000. You shouldn't be able to charge them $30 for the transaction. It should cost pennies, and that's what you get with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin and the Lightning Network, etc. With Jack Dorsey's what he's doing with
Absolutely.
Cash App.
Yeah. Yeah. And what they're doing is they're democratizing finance. Like I said, they're incentivizing people to save, which is an inherently good thing. And you don't want excess consumption. You don't want gluttony. Nobody really benefits from that. And this is someone who is speaking from the perspective of being invested in a lot of companies that are driven by like excess consumerism. Um, you know, as an owner of as a shareholder of like a lot of these companies, I mean, I don't like excess consumerism. I'm really not in favor of that. It doesn't really align with my moral values, and I don't like being wasteful. I really don't. I think that being
The
wasteful
rich
is
want you to consume.
inherently
The rich want you to
inherently a big
consume so that
problem.
they can accumulate.
Of course they do.
You can be a consumer, right? Or you can be an accumulator. You pick which one you want to be. And another
Yeah,
word for
and
a consumer and accumulator is, if you're a consumer, right? That
yep.
means you're poor. If you're an accumulator, that means you're rich. Which one you want to be? A accumulator or
And
a
here's
consumer?
the interesting thing. I'm glad you say that. It's such an interesting juxtaposition. But when you look at it a step further, I mean, if you make the right decision now, you can be both tomorrow. You don't have to be. All these kids. We see this. We see these millennials going around. We see these Gen Z guys going around and gals, and they're going out there, got the Louis Vuitton bags and the fucking Gucci sneakers and the Gucci belts and all that crap. And it's funny because if you're under the age of 40, you shouldn't be buying that shit. Focus on your finances, focus on your investments, pay off your student loans if you have any, get to work, bust your ass, and focus on saving some money. We're not telling you to deprive yourself. Focus on saving some money, focus on investing. If you save 15% of your gross income, 15%, that's not too bad. 15% of your gross income, you prioritize that, you do that, you'll retire a millionaire. And not only that, but by the time you're 55, 60 years old, assuming you start in your early 20s, you will be in a position where you can change the lives of your family, your immediate family, um, your relatives, your aunt, your grandkids, like everyone within your lineage. You can change their life. And like I said, if you make the right decision today, you can be both tomorrow. If you decide, hey, you know what, I'm gonna put my head down, I'm gonna grind, I'm gonna focus on investing, I'm gonna make it one of my, I'm gonna make it my opus. You could do particularly well, and you don't have to. You could have all the nice shit too, man. We're not like I said, I'm not telling you to deprive yourself, but just moderation, man. You can't be buying as God's pulling up here, a 2015 re-edition wide leather Gucci belt for $495. It looks like that's a woman's belt. I don't know why he's going on PayPal to buy this, and it looks like he's showing his email there. Not a very wise move. We'll have to cut that footage out, but very
Oh, I
interesting.
just had to buy the.
There's no
I
reason.
thought you said
There's
buy
no
Gucci
reason
belts.
to. There's no reason to buy a Gucci belt. You know,
Oh, I thought you said to buy it. That's why I was just about to buy one. I thought you said it was a
so
good
there's no
financial
reason to
decision.
buy one. Think you got to look at things from utility. Utility is what you need, and more people need to do this. There's nothing wrong with being a consumer to an extent and buying some things you like, and fuck it, go for it, right? But at the same time, you really want to look at utility. So I'll give you an example, folks. We record these podcast episodes very, very, very late at night. God has a very crazy busy schedule. I have a crazy busy schedule. And we record these episodes typically when things are kind of quiet and the rest of the world's asleep. So I was incredibly busy today. And for the past week, I've been incredibly busy. I won't talk too much about my personal life here because I know you guys aren't really here for that. But um, it's been a quite it's been quite a crazy week and a half. And I had this coffee I bought. I know a lot of you guys drink coffee, but I had this coffee I bought, and it was a good deal. It was. Am I here? Hello. I thought I might have just been. Okay, we're good. I thought there was some type of error that went on. No, because it just cut to your. I don't know if you saw
I
that. I think it
changed
cut directly to you. It was
the
like you
frame.
just fucking muted me or something. I was
You
like,
can
what
still
happened?
talk. I changed the frame. I was checking at different angles, but
All right,
it
just
didn't
just
cut
leave
off
it
what
as
you were
this. It's
saying.
fine. Just leave it as this. This is probably this take at least this portion is definitely going to be audio, like 100%. But anyway, here's what was interesting about this. So I bought this coffee. It was a good deal. It was 25 cents a cup for a K cup. So you go, all right, that's pretty good. But here's the thing: the first of all, the caffeine content in it wasn't too good, and additionally, the coffee didn't taste that great. I was putting up with it. I probably got about halfway through it. It was like 100 cups. And then I said, fuck this, I'm done with this, right? I went back to the original brand that I bought, Lavazza, by the way, not a sponsor of the show. Maybe one day there will be. But they make unbelievable espresso K cups. And let me tell you something. I had two of those bad boys, and I'm going at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm fucking wired right now. It's 4:03 a.m. where we are right now. I'm fucking wired. I mean, I was hanging out with some friends before Friday night, kicking back, as God likes to say, partying it up. Even though I was not partying it up, I was a responsible driver, being a responsible adult. And I also did have a Bang Energy, which those things are kind of, you know, they're good. They're pretty good, but you got to be careful about some of the additives in there. So you don't want to have them constantly. You got to be smart about that. But that's one way to get the juices flowing and to get going and to be able to keep going at 4 o'clock in the morning like we are. And you know, those are all good things. But that's something that, as far as consumerism is concerned, those are things that are making me more productive because it's making me more alert and it's making me much more aware of like the podcast that we're recording. And without that, I probably wouldn't be awake right now. So we're just getting it done, man. We're grinding it out, and
That's right.
that's all you can
Grind it
ask
out.
for. Got to grind it out. You got
And
to bust your ass, you know? So that's
we
what we're
grinded
doing
it
right
out.
now.
We grinded it out. And I think, you know, that we're going to come to the conclusion of this episode. I hope everybody listening, you know, got some valuable intel from this episode, was able to learn something and, you know, grow as a person.
Yeah, I think that we learned a lot today. We talked a lot about Ukraine, talked a lot about Biden's State of the Union, talked about the Fed a little bit and how employees were being banned from trading securities, talked about oil and gas prices, talked about some crypto stuff, talked about some tech, covered a lot of stuff, and there's a lot more we're going to cover in the later episodes. So thanks for tuning in. Come back at a later point. Come back next week. Come back, you know, whenever the next episodes are up, and we'll talk about those and get some stuff done, man. So just stay focused, follow the grind, and keep fucking working everything out, man. That's all you got to do.
Beep, 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 beep. That's going to
Beep,
be
beep,
the
beep, beep,
conclusion.
beep. And
Beep, 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 beep,
don't
beep, beep.
be
And
don't be a